Given the increasing restrictions on the Second Amendment in Washington State, do you agree with this direction? Other counties have officially spoken out against various state measures which your constituents do not support. Would you consider speaking against such measures once in office, especially if the public used the democratic process in a local vote to express their opinion?
I'm going first, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're talking about the Second Amendment. We're talking about would I speak out against infringements of the Second Amendment, just so I understand it right. Would I publicly speak out against?
Yes,
Yeah.
if your constituent.
If my constituents,
Yeah.
we know where the constituents are gonna go with that.
Yeah.
No, yes, I would, and I'll just answer directly. I do believe that the Second Amendment does protect the right of individuals to own firearms, and it should not be restricted. And I agree with that, and I will speak out and publicly support that, irregardless of what the state does. And I think we see the direction the state is going in that direction, and it is a sobering thought for all of us when we continue to see the division of the cultures in our state. And the views of the people of this county and their understanding of the law and what is right are drastically diverging from the views on the west side. And so I'm with this county. That's where I'm at. And so, yeah, and I would support that. At the same time, I think we need to advocate and we need to work with the state and influence the state and everything we can on the state and federal level, and to make it a better place and to understand and support what we believe the Constitution says. So I think that answers it pretty directly.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to repeat the question?
No. That's not.
Very good.
The Second Amendment has two words that are often left out of the discussion, and that is well-regulated. It's interesting that in 1787 that the founding fathers even put those two words in there. People say that they don't need to be regulated. Well, they put in well-regulated. They didn't just put in regulated. They said well-regulated. It's an odd amendment. I think that when you look at the historical context of our Constitution, and let's say some of the time period, 30, 35, 40 years after its approval, and in 1787, and you read some of the letters and the correspondence, say with Mr. Jefferson, and between people who wrote him, and were already at that point in 1810, 1820, are already concerned about the Constitution and the amendments. And what did they mean? And to paraphrase some of Mr. Jefferson's responses, basically he said, you're a fool to think that what we wrote in 1787 was meant to be in stone and never to be changed. It fit what we needed and the dynamics of our society at that time. At some point, it will need to be changed because societies change. That's from one of our founding fathers, 20, 30 years after he himself helped write the Declaration of Independence. Given that they put in well-regulated in the Second Amendment, I wonder what they would say today if standing there as they discuss it, everybody in the room had an AK-47 or an AR-15. You have to remember what they were holding in their arms back then. They weren't holding, even a 6-round pistol. It was kind of a single shot thing, and it was kind of a muzzle loader, some of them, and it wasn't quick. I can kill 8 to 10 or 100 people real quick. You could go out and have a duel, and there was only going to be one shot one bullet fired by each guy because that's all he had in his gun. And I think we need to use our intelligence, the God-given brains that we have, to understand that we live in a different time than 1787. We have access to things that they didn't have, and I don't think they could even comprehend in 1787. And, stepping into some other history, if you want to have an understanding of what happens to a culture for violence, it's very interesting to study South Africa. Up until into the 70s, South Africa didn't have TV. And so there's a beautiful history of social violence that is recorded in their history there without TV. And then TV is introduced. And now you get to see what happens to social violence. It goes through the roof. And what do we do in America? We spend a lot of time on TV. Our TV is fairly violent. Our internet is fairly violent. Streaming on your kid's phone can be fairly violent. And we wonder why we have such high rates of crime and violence in our country. It's tied to the way we choose to live. It's tied to the way we choose to, whether you want to say inform ourselves, entertain ourselves, educate ourselves, because TV can be used for all of those things. But South Africa was a beautiful testing site to see what happens to the family structure when TV is introduced and the family structure crumbles. And so we in America we are sucked into that tube. We have bought into it, and now we buy guns at an unbelievable rate. And we wonder why we have violence. We wonder why we have people in Michigan plotting to overthrow a governor, kidnap a governor. I personally think the Second Amendment needs to be readdressed. Not necessarily removed, but it needs to be readdressed to reflect our modern time and our understanding of, we have a fairly good idea of what motivates people now and what they can do when they get their hands on the wrong things. I don't think any of us would deny that in 1787, kids, or in the 1800s, kids may have carried guns to school. They probably did. We don't even dream of that now. And when they do show up in school, what happens? Well, we have too many episodes of that, huh? We really don't want to talk about it too much. No, but I think that I think the Second Amendment needs to be readdressed, and I'll leave it at that.